Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Forecast. In today's video, I'll be going over the 5 biggest problems with Manchester United. Yes, only 5. I think we all know why I'd be only going over 5, because if I was to do any more, we'd be here for a couple of hours. So this is the 5 biggest problems with Manchester United. But before we go into this, I'm going to quickly discuss Grimsby Manchester United, as this is the game that has inspired this video. If you look at the Manchester United lineup that played Grimsby, it was actually very strong, with the likes of Cunha, Ahmad, even Sesko starting in this game. United went in really strong, clearly trying to get themselves in a bit of a cup run, and the only real player that you would say wouldn't probably be at the level of a team like Grimsby could be Frederickson. He's just a youth player and maybe he's not quite at the level. And they actually took him off at half time for Matheus de Ligt. They brought Bruno Fernandes on. They brought Bryan Mbeumo on. So United really did go for this game, but they still lost to a League Two opposition. So why did they lose? Obviously the Onana mistakes. He was also had a howler during the shootout. Some people blame Amorim for the loss. I'm not so sure that's really Amorim's fault. They looked like the worst team up to sort of the 65th minute until really Grimsby started to tie, which you would expect from a League Two opposition, and United started to take advantage from this, but they required a Harry Maguire set-piece goal once again to actually get them out of trouble into penalties where they obviously lost. Anyway, into the actual video, which is the 5 biggest problems with Manchester United. In 5th place for the biggest problems at Manchester United, I've gone with the manager Ruben Amorim. I think there's no doubt Ruben Amorim is causing some problems currently at Manchester United, but do I think he's the main problem? No. His win percentage is horrendous, we all know this. He's got 23.2% in the Prem. This is unacceptable for Manchester United manager, and means that he's only won 8 of his 34 games. He's also drawn 10, and he's lost 16. This is not good enough for a Manchester United manager. He's also making countless mistakes. He's not playing Kobbie Mainoo, when Mainoo, I would say, was one of United's best players. He's got to find a way to fit it in. That maybe means you have to slightly adjust the system, but I think it's worth it to get a talent like Kobbie Mainoo in the side. The one thing I do sort of respect of Ruben Amorim is I think we've seen too many managers for Manchester United look to change up their style of play and then get sacked eventually because of it. You look at Ten Hag, first couple of games, he got battered, but he tried to play the football he wanted to see the players play. For the next couple of years, he went to a counter-attacking system and it eventually fell apart. And people blame Ten Hag for not being able to change back to sort of his football, a possession-style game. And people were saying, what's the point of this manager? We saw the same thing happen with managers like Van Gaal trying to play one style of football and then having to change to another, and then even after winning an FA Cup, being sacked. So I think there's more of a problem than the Manchester United manager. Look, if you look at all these managers, they've all been sacked sort of after 2.5 years. It seems to fall apart, and I think there's maybe more issues maybe in the higher ups, maybe the players. You'll wait to see what I actually think about that. And I do think Amorim is a good manager. Maybe he's just not got the resources he needs. Something where I do sort of blame him though is I do wonder how much influence did he have over playing Bruno in this deeper role and then not bringing in a 6 or an 8, so allowing Bruno to play in the 10. They need to get a signing like Belieber in, or maybe a Wharton. Maybe they still will get them in. I'm not so convinced they will. If they do, then maybe that will save United's season. What do I think will happen with Ruben Amorim? I think he'll either get sacked or he'll walked. Would I get rid of him? Maybe, maybe not. I really don't think it matters at this point. I think whoever comes in is set up to fail, and that is the story of Manchester United. Moving on to the 4th biggest problem at Manchester United, and it's the inability to sell. If you look at the 2 players on my screen, Antony and Sancho, both of these players United are clearly interested in letting go of. For Sancho, they've been trying to let go of him for more than 2 years. This is ridiculous. How can a player that you want to sell still be at your club for 2 years? Well, the real answer is he's on so much money that he doesn't want to leave. He's on over £300,000 a week, so why would he want to leave? And another club isn't going to offer him £300,000 a week because none of them are that stupid to do that, and also because all of his value has gone down since what's happened at United. So what results is you've got a player there that doesn't want to be there, that you don't want to be there, but he will never leave because of the wage issues. So what happens? Well, he agrees to go out on loan on deadline day, as we usually see, but you have to pay him half of his wages, and the club that goes on loan, as we've seen Dortmund or Chelsea, will pay the other half. So that's what keeps happening with players like this. so that when they come back after their loan, they never activate the future fee because Sancho will demand that high wage again. So he just ends up back at the club. So this is what happens with Manchester United currently with these loan deals. So how do you solve this? Well, first of all, you need to start giving players less money. I think that's obvious. And we're saying and think about what happens if this player goes wrong. They always seem to think about, oh, this is going to be an amazing signing. What happens if this goes wrong? What are we actually going to do as a football club? The other issue I have with selling players is that they often sell young talent for not enough and they turn out to be good. So how can United solve this problem? Well, first of all, we've started seeing that they're including buyback fees. That's clever, just in case the player turns out to be good. But often what we're seeing is the likes of Alvaro Fernandez, they go, well, I'd rather go to Real Madrid, because who wouldn't rather go to Real Madrid? So this is a real problem again. They're sitting and Alvaro Fernandez, they only got about 8 million for, and he's turned out to be a great player. So why can they only get 8 million quid for someone like Alvaro Fernandez? Well, I look at an example like Liverpool, who just got 35 million for Jarell Quansah this summer. That's a lot of money for a player that actually struggled a lot last year. But why can Liverpool get that? Because they're successful on the pitch and people trust Liverpool's players now. So people are willing to pay that much, and that allows Liverpool to bring in someone potentially like Mark Gahey for like £40 million, which is an absolute steal if you look at it from that side. United also United's players always seem to go out or after a transfer, players like Scott McTominay, and do well, and everyone goes, oh, why did United let go of Scott McTominay? Honestly, it annoys me so much. It's because it's a different environment. Players thrive under less pressure. He's doing so well at Napoli because Serie A happens to just be an easier league. So this is always going to happen, and I think people just need to accept when a player leaves Manchester United, they're probably going to do well in a better environment where they can thrive. We saw it when Antony went out on loan last year as well to Real Betis. So that's sort of what I see in this problem. The main reason why the fourth biggest problem at Manchester United was selling was because of the original recruitment, and that's the third biggest problem. The recruitment back then wasn't good enough, and I still don't think it's quite up to par. The recruitment at Manchester United was been really poor in the last 5 years, as I've already highlighted. The signing is Antony, Jadon Sancho, and United have promised that they're changing. They're not going to put players on massive wages. They're not going to sign unnecessary players, and they're going to really target the positions that actually need to be fixed. An example of this was under Ollie, where they continued with Fred and Scott McTominay. They brought in Ronaldo, which looked like a great signing, but then they didn't actually think about, well, what are we going to do with the midfield? Is the midfield now going to work? How does Ronaldo change the game that we're going to play? And that's just something that I feel like they're continuing to ignore in this summer. The midfield is still a problem at Manchester United. And why is the midfield a problem? Because they brought in Cunha and Mbeumo and Sesko. I think they could have used maybe two. Maybe they only needed one, because they could have played Ahmed at right wing back, but I actually really liked him there. So I would probably let that off and say I think they could have used two. Sesko plus another. I do think Bryan Mbeumo made the most sense for how they were going to play, because he's a more runner in behind. And what you could have done is you could have just switched Bruno Fernandes into Cunha's role, which is the left 10, and then that opens up another position. I really like the Matheus Cunha, but that was really not necessary. If you look at the players they have in that position, Joshua Zirkzee, Mason Mount. So that would be my main issue with United's recruitment strategy. They could have just brought in another midfielder like Belieber and Adam Wharton. Something like that would have really worked for United, and I actually think that was one of the biggest priorities of the summer, and that's the main reason this is in third place, because they're not prioritising what I actually think are the biggest problems. And do you know what I thought the actual biggest problem was, maybe apart from the striker, was the keeper. I don't know how they still haven't signed a keeper. There's Donnarumma on the market. We know that he was interested. Mike Maignan, I think, would be a good keeper. I can guarantee you one thing. They're better than Onana, and they're definitely better than Bayindir. I have not seen two worse keepers at Manchester United ever together. It's just unbelievable how these are two other keepers of Manchester United. The recruitment previously with those also wasn't good enough. And this just sort of highlights why it's the recruitment, because there's so many problems that had previously happened because of recruitment and now are still happening. And in my opinion, it has improved, but it's still not improved up to scratch. Moving on to the second biggest issue at Manchester United, and it is the players. Yes, very similar to the last point of recruitment. I'd just like to get this sort of rain towel to the way. Any person that says Manchester United should switch to a 4-3-3 from a 3-4-3, I really don't think understands football. It's that simple. Manchester United, it doesn't matter what system they play, the players are generally just shit. We've seen enough evidence now, and people get fooled all the time, including me. Oh, it's the manager. Every time I say this accidentally, oh, it's the manager. We're just got to accept it's clearly not the manager, and it's actually the players. The players are all always the people that get the manager out, then the players all of a sudden play well when the manager comes in, and then in a year later they play shit. It's that simple. So looking into the actual players at this team right now, you've got Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro in the midfield. For me, on paper that looks alright, maybe 4 years ago, but Bruno Fernandes does not suit that deeper role. We've seen this enough. This is partly to do with Amorim, it's partly to do with recruitment, but it's also to do with the inability of the player. So I actually think Bruno Fernandes needs to be sold. Casemiro on the right DM, let's be honest, he's nowhere near good enough. And the only reason he's there is because he's on 300k a week. And this continues to be a real problem for Manchester United. Casemiro is too slow, and we've seen people like Grimsby run past him. Like, this needs to be sorted out. That midfield is not good enough. The attack, I think, well, obviously it's new, but I think it has the potential to be good. Ahmed at right wing back, I think it's alright. I don't think it's brilliant, but I think he can do that role well enough. The defence is also alright, but it's the keeper. Once again, the keeper continues to cost Manchester United every game, and this is the main reason why the players aren't good enough. The midfield's not good enough, and the keeper. The keeper is so shit. It's unbelievable. It doesn't matter who's in goal. Bayinda, Onana. I would get Heaton in goal at this point. At least he might claim his crosses. He might not be able to pass out from the back, but I'd guarantee you one thing. He won't make as many mistakes as Onana and Bayinda. At this point, you might as well put a stick figure in goal. That's how useless these two are. So this is the actual problem, in my opinion, the players. And we've seen this happen all the time. They also continuously down tools. We've seen this as soon as it doesn't go their way. Dressing room atmosphere always seems to be crap when it's not going their way. You see people go tweet out like Jadon Sancho, Ronaldo, Garnacho. This happens too much at Manchester United, and I'm blaming the players for this. If at the start you can blame the manager and say he's not doing well enough, but eventually you've got to look at the players, because the manager continues to get blamed for, in my opinion, players' mistakes. Moving on to the biggest problem with Manchester United, and it is the owners. The Glazers have continued to rip the club apart by taking out huge debts and leaving the club in £1 billion debt. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he's also created big issues for United by turning fans completely against him and the ownership. What he did is he lifted ticket prices continuously over last season. Even though United were continuously getting worse, he thought, well, I can just keep lifting ticket prices because he knows the demand will stay high. That is the perfect way to turn yourself against the fans. And now he's under even more pressure. The fans don't want him. I don't know why they want him in the first place. I think it was because, I'm a Manchester United fan, or I'm from the area. In reality, from what I can see so far, he doesn't care about Manchester United, because what he would have done is he would have either invested more money and he gone, I'm going to take massive debt, I'm going to sell all my other teams, because he has loads of other teams he could have sold for good money, or what he would have done is he would have just left it to some other billionaire who would have been able to invest more money. So that's created issues for United, because they're real limited on what they can invest, and this is the overarching problem, in my opinion, for United. It's created this toxic atmosphere, this institution problem, and Sir Alex Ferguson was absolutely making United owners get away with it over the years, because he just kept overperforming, which meant that the owners just didn't have to spend nearly as much as that they should have had to spend. You look at sort of the players that they've brought in over the years, they've just brought in the absolute minimum, they've recruited wrong. It's just all these problems that add up to the owners, in my opinion. The players, well, that's down to United. They don't invest enough in the stadium, the infrastructure, which doesn't allow players to flourish. It's just, there's so many problems with the owners of Manchester United. They've made the wrong mistake over picking managers. Even if you think Ruben Amorim is a real problem, well, who appointed him at the end of the day? Sir Jim Ratcliffe, because he was the person that appointed all these people that were going to put the person in charge. So that is, in my opinion, the real reason why the owners are the problem at Manchester United. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you actually think there's actually a bigger problem at Manchester United? I'm a Liverpool fan. I'm very much looking at this from an outside, from the outside. If you think there's a bigger problem at United, please let me know. I'm actually really interested to know what you think, because I know there's a lot of people that really believe Ruben Amorim is the real problem. But if that's what you believe, let me know why. And if you agree with me, is there anything that you think I missed about why the owners are actually the real problem at United? Because I'm very much coming from an outside point of view, and I know something about the topic, but not hugely. It's probably as much as you would know. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.